This book has destroyed me. Hey guys, and welcome to another video. So today I'm going to be reviewing Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I'm just going to jump right into it. So first of all, for those of you who don't know, this is part of the Hunger Games series, and it's Haymitch's Games. And if you haven't heard of the Hunger Games, you've probably been living under a rock. But essentially, in the Hunger Games series, Katniss and Peeta, who are reaped to participate in the Hunger Games, their mentor is Haymitch Abernathy, and he is kind of like a drunk, and everybody loves Haymitch because he's like, I just love his character. And so this is going back to his story, because obviously the mentors are always previous victors, and so this is his games. So going into I had a lot of like anticipation leading up to this, because like my cousin and I are doing the Bookish podcast, Pens and Paperbacks. I'll have that here as a card. And so we knew this book was coming out. This is one of the anticipated reads that we had for this year, and so I was getting hyped up for it. And before I started reading this book, I was reading a different book, and I was in a reading slump, and I actually didn't want to read anymore, and it was like really sad and kind of depressing. And so my cousin and I, we picked out a few books that I was interested in, and I read the opening lines, and I was like, okay, whichever one intrigues me the most is the book that will more than likely help me get out of the reading slump. And that was this one. Like, once I started reading it, I couldn't put it down. And so this book got me out of like a major reading slump. If I loved Haymitch's character before, I had no idea what I had in store. But for a little bit of background, like, I love the Hunger Games series, and I read it when I was a kid, in middle school, high school, somewhere in that range, right? And it shaped a lot of like, and influenced a lot of my writing and who I am as an author. And not just because it inspired my book not Mortal, I don't know what I said, and not just because it inspired my book Hunter, which is back here, but also because like I started an era where I entered a lot of writing competitions that was themed around the Hunger Games, where there's a bunch of writers, and the judges would give you like a story, and you'd have to write it, and each task we would get eliminated, and like it influenced a lot of my writing. And I am the author that I am today because of the Hunger Games. So coming back into it, I wasn't sure whether it would like hold up, because that was like my teenage self, and so I didn't know how I was going to enjoy it. I'm not a big YA reader, and I don't really connect well with teenagers in books or young kids. There's been a few exceptions to that, like my editor and good author for N.H.A. Pruitt, her series, I did reviews of her books here. So there's a few times with a few exceptions to that. So I wasn't sure how it would hold up. But when I started reading this, I remember describing this to my cousin as like, before I started it, it's like, oh, you're going to go visit an old friend, and you're not sure whether you actually do want to hang out and whether you'll reconnect or not. And then as I got to reading it, I enjoyed it so much. It's like, it literally is like visiting an old friend, and then you realize that you've actually missed that person, and you reconnect, and you just love that person. And like, I don't know, it was so, I forgot how much I love the Hunger Games universe and Panem, and like the whole system that Suzanne Collins has set up. Like, it's so sad and tragic that the Capitol literally like forces them to send 2 tributes to the arena every year, over and over and over again, one boy and one girl as tributes to the Hunger Games and what they've done to oppress society. And for me, one of the things that was really intriguing was getting to see the progression. I have watched the original prequel, which was about Snows. I haven't read the book yet, although I do have it over here, so I think I may read that one next. But so I've seen the movie, so it's like interesting to see the progression of the games, and like for Haymitch, like seeing his version of the games, like, and the way that they treated the tributes was like really interesting and intriguing, because I constantly compared it to Hunger Games and Katniss's, where they're like pampered and taken care of, and in this one they're still like, they're treated better than they were in the movie for the prequel, but they're still like chained, and they're still mistreated and treated horribly. And you can kind of see the progression that they haven't quite got to that pampering part yet. And the other thing that I found intriguing, one, I love Haymitch's character, and I loved getting Haymitch, like young Haymitch, because he doesn't drink, and like the weird, like it's so weird because you go into it, like he is the old mentor and he is a drunkard, and he clearly like has a miserable life and he lives alone. And so it's like in this one, he's got a mom and a brother he loves, he's got a girlfriend that he loves, he doesn't drink, he helps make the liquor, but he doesn't drink. And so you're like, well, how does he get from point A to point B? And then it's like, you know, he comes out the victor, and this is actually the quarter kill, which means there's double the amount of tributes. So he didn't just have 24 tributes to win, he had 48. Well, you know, 40 minus himself. And so it's like you go in with a lot of questions, and then because we know the outcome, it creates this situation where it's like seems like it's going to be predictable because you know what happens, like he's going to win, he gets reaped, but at every turn in this story she throws out twists that you're like, okay, that didn't go the way that I was expecting it to go. And so it's not predictable at all in that sense, and it's still, everything that this poor kid goes through is so horrible. And you find yourself realizing that like this is a YA book, but the things that he goes through is so horrible. And then I'm like, I guess going at it from an adult brain, because it's like he's a 16-year-old kid going through all of these things, and it's just it's heartbreaking. And it's honestly like I really couldn't put it down. Once the Hunger Games starts in this book, it was like I started that section of it yesterday, and I read 100 pages yesterday, and then tonight I just finished it out because it was just like you can't stop reading. But like I said, it's just so creative, and the arena and the mutts and stuff like that she comes up with in this, like she never fails to come up with creative arenas. And that's one of the things that I love, is that I always look forward to and find really exciting, is like what kind of things are going to be in the arena. And every arena has been very different from another, and like this one was definitely super thrilling and exciting. And on top of that, Haymitch kind of like actually has a rebellious attitude, and you see how District 12 is like really rebellious, and I wasn't expecting that, because I think in the Hunger Games, I can't really remember the details, but in the Hunger Games they seem really like defeated, and like in this one they're actually kind of rebellious. And Haymitch actually reminds me a lot of Katniss, like he actually has a lot of that in him. And again, you constantly compare and think about the Haymitch that we know, which is the old mentor and the drunk who isn't a really good mentor and everything else, and how does he end up like that? And then because of President Snow's prequel and just people in general, I feel like there has been a certain level of sympathy for Snow's character, and that's fine, obviously, and I haven't read his prequel, so I probably may be one of those people, but I feel like this book also kind of like reminds you that he's the villain in this, and like it's just how evil and sadistic this man really is, and it makes you hate him, and you just feel for Haymitch and you root for him. It also featured some characters that we know. In Catching Fire, there was like the next quarter kill that Katniss had to do is like previous victors coming back to the arena, and so we got to meet a lot of the previous victors in that one that made appearances in this one, but like their younger selves, so I thought that was really cool. All of the other characters and the people that he befriends and allies with, like you get really attached to them, and then you're expecting a certain outcome because we know he ends up the victor, so clearly they all die, you know, like you're kind of like going into the book with that. But she takes you on such a journey and does such a good job of making it to where it's not predictable or repetitive in any way. And again, the arena is so creative that it makes it really exciting and action-packed, and I literally cannot praise this book enough. I literally don't have any complaints. The writing style is in first person present tense, which I feel like really works because you're like, it's the character's voice and their attitude, so it creates a situation where like a lot of grammatical rules kind of fly out the window because it's the person talking. And Haymitch comes from District 12, so he's kind of like that country boy kind of redneck, so he kind of has that vibe to him, and so the way that he talks, so it like keeps you, like at least keeps me from my editor brain, because you don't see any mistakes because it's just the way that he talks and it's his attitude, which by the way I love, and I love his personality. And I just love that he's such a rebel, and how hard he actually tried to like rebel against the Capitol, and seeing this early form of rebellion and how Snow responds to that, and then knowing that he's kind of a part of that later on in the Hunger Games when Katniss kind of rises up is really interesting. And actually, like, to me, a good prequel whether it's a book, movie, TV show, whatever, a good prequel should add to the original content and make you see it in a new light that still honors the original intention and makes you look at it with new eyes. And that, I feel like, is what this does, where it's like, I'm actually wanting to reread The Hunger Games now, and specifically like just to reread them because I love this world and I miss it and want to go back to it, which again is another good point, but also because I want to read Haymitch's lines and see how it changes my perspective now that I know his story. And I love that concept. I feel like potentially Snow's prequel could do that. And the reason why I keep calling it Snow's prequel is because the title of it is very close to the title of another book, and I get the two mixed up and I will just combine them. It's called, I actually, where did my book go for it? The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is the prequel's, Snow's prequel, which is really close to The Songbird and the Heart of Stone, and I mess it up every time. So Snow's prequel, that's the one I'm talking about. So Snow's prequels potentially may do that with Snow's character as well, but I'm really interested because I've only watched the movie once, so I don't remember a whole lot of details, and the movie was like, I've heard a lot of people talk about how rushed it was, but yeah, and so now this is definitely, for me, a 5-star read, and it's definitely going on my favorite fantasy shelf because I had such a blast with it. And for me, I've always been a huge fan of the Hunger Games world because I like the trope of a oppressive government oppressing the people and a people rebelling against that and rising up. And I also love the TV show Survivor and that style of fantasy where it's like it's Survivor, but it's like a dangerous game of Survivor, so it's being televised to the people are sent to die. Like the Hunger Games was the first that did it, and it's been reused, like the concept of an arena in a fantasy or dystopian setting has been reused many times in other books since. The Hunger Games was the first one that did it, but it is technically like Survivor, the TV show, and I did it with my book Survivor, which I'm still in the editing process of it, and it's been kind of an age-old thing because like ancient Rome had the gladiators, so the idea of people being captured and forced to fight or kill each other for the entertainment of an oppressive society is an age-old thing that goes all the way back to ancient Rome and the gladiators, and I love that trope just because of the injustice of it all and the people fighting and rebelling and all that stuff. And so I've been a huge fan of the Hunger Games, and that's why it shaped so much of my writing and my books. It influenced several different stories that I've created. It influenced me entering those writing competitions that I wrote over and over again, and those writing competitions influenced my writing style and taught me a lot, and that's how I actually became an editor, because eventually I became a judge and a host of those, and so it just snowballed into so much of my life. And yet I always, like, for me, especially now as an adult, like, I prefer male characters, so I had no idea that my love for the Hunger Games could get any bigger, and that just kind of became one of those. I read it as a teenager and I loved it, and it shaped a lot of who I am, and I will always have an appreciation for it, but that's kind of where it stopped, because obviously I've read a lot of books since then. But for me, having a male character, which is like, again, I love male characters more than females. I don't know why, it's just a thing. So living in that world that has that trope and all those concepts and things that I love to read and just that I find so fascinating, and just the whole rebellious, like, trying to fight against the government oppressing you, that whole vibe with a male character, especially a male character that I already know and am fond of, aka Haymitch. Like, I had no idea that my love for this series could grow so big, but it has. Like, this is by far the best book in the series. I'm gonna reread them, so it'll be interesting to see how they compare to each other more directly, but this is my favorite in the whole series. It is the best of the whole series, and it's one of my favorite books of all time. It's going on my favorite fantasy shelf for sure. I love this book. 5 stars, and now I want Finnick's story, so, but yeah, so I don't know if I'm gonna read Snow's prequel next or The Hunger Games next. I don't actually have a copy of The Hunger Games, so I need to get one. So we'll see what I read next. But yeah, this has been my review of Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I also have a lot of quotes that I really liked. I wrote them on my phone, and I'm filming on my phone, so I can't actually access them now. I do remember one that was on page 60. I wanted to read to you guys some quotes. Outside we get about 30 seconds of fresh air before we're loaded into a windowless peacekeeper's van. I've only been in an automobile a handful of times, in the car to the train station yesterday, and on a truck a couple of school trips to the mines. Never when I couldn't see out. Never when I was being taken to die. No light, no air, like they buried me already. Just like, oh. And then his big quote is, which I actually have a special like Walmart art in here, and it actually has his quote, which is the best. They will not use my tears for their entertainment. And that's a quote by Haymitch himself. Yeah, they just had so many quotes. And also, I cried. I cried a lot in this book, more than I actually have in any other story. So it was like, I cried at least, I can't remember because I have it counted on my phone, but it was like 4 or 5 times, and they were all at the end, toward the end of the book. It was just like boom, boom, boom. And there were other moments too that I teared up, and I just like, I normally don't cry in books, so there were plenty of other moments throughout the story when I would have cried too. So yeah, new favorite book. I love it. And it's also like clean, like Suzanne Collins. YA these days I feel like is getting more and more spicy. There's no spicy stuff. A lot of violence, a lot of graphic violence. It's actually pretty, for a YA and the Hunger Games level, like the Hunger Games has always been known for being extra violent for like the YA and the YA of the time. Like we didn't have a whole lot of violence in YA books at the time it came out. So it does have a lot of graphic violence in it, but it's a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. Y'all should read it. And the cover is gorgeous. I also love the hardback here. So that's beautiful. And I did read without the dust jacket because I didn't want to hurt the book. So love it. 5-star reads. Have you read this book? Let me know if you have and what you think in the comments below. And if you haven't, what are you doing? Go read this book. Especially if you're a fan of the Hunger Games, you absolutely need to read this book. If you liked this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in the meantime, if you liked my review of this book, then check out my review of Onyx Storm, which was another anticipated read that I had this year. I loved that one as well, and it's another fantasy favorite, so check it out. You don't want to miss it.